everyone. I'm Tucson Weekly senior writer Jim Ninsel, your host for Zona Politics. Joining me today to talk about what's going on in the local political scene, the chair of the Pima County Democratic Party, Cheryl Cage, and the chair of the Pima County Republican Party, Bill Beard. Thanks to both of you for joining me here on Zona Politics.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.
Let's start with the City of Tucson and its new budget plan. Bill, what's your take on the city's $1.3 billion spending proposal?
Fundamentally, the City of Tucson has got its priorities backwards. If you look back over the last 4, 5, even 10 years, the budget priorities have been everything but what the city charter calls for. You read the city charter and it's pretty clear. The city council is mainly responsible for the roads, the parks, the police, the fire departments in the city of Tucson. You know, protect the citizens first, provide a means of transportation around the city, and provide a good environment for them to enjoy their neighborhoods in. But based on the amount of funding those parts of the city have actually received in terms of budget, those are not priorities for this council. They are things that have very little to do with any of those main priorities as outlined in the founding document for the city of Tucson. So you have to go back and question whether the folks in charge, number one, are even paying attention to what their responsibilities are, but more importantly, number two, they're not listening to the citizens, because for the average person driving or living in the city of Tucson, they have suffered. We're now, what, 1 in 4 in poverty living in the city of Tucson? You've got the worst roads in the Southwest United States. Police and fire are at funding levels and at manpower levels that cities half our size have. Those are fundamentally mismatched between what this mayor and council have produced, including this new budget, and what the citizens expect of their council.
Cheryl, your thoughts on how the city's looking at spending this $1.3 billion?
Well, I think that we are in a new normal, which is we have had devastating cuts to our shared revenue. No one wants to take any money from the federal government, so this is something that we have to do on our own. We have to say, if we want to make Tucson the best city it can be, then we're going to have to do this on our own. And I think that this budget is a great blueprint for the future. Let's talk about the reality of what's happened over the last couple of years. Again, devastating cuts, a recession. You talk about parks and police and all that stuff. Well, where does that money come from? That money comes from our business community, our homeowners, that type of thing. This city and council, mayor and council, have done a tremendous job with the downtown revitalization. We're going to have 2 new hotels coming in. That hasn't happened in decades. The streetcar is a huge success. It brought in 1,500 permanent jobs. The Gutierrez Bridge that was opened, that bridges downtown to our west side, which is our birthplace of Tucson. There's going to be tremendous economic development there. Rio Nuevo is settled. The TCC got renovations. Mission Garden got $1 million in investment. This mayor and council have done amazing business incentive programs, and there's a lot of them, but let me talk about one of them. The primary incentive program, which is where a business has to say, we will commit $5 million in infrastructure or salary. We will pay our employees up to over $5,400. They have to have 25 jobs that come in with there. And just in 2014, we had 6 companies that did that. We had $30 million in fusion and 456 new high-paying jobs that paid anywhere from $52,400 to $80,000. And that's just one program. If you go to TucsonAZ.gov and you're a business person, I spent a couple hours over the course of the last couple of months. They have a remarkable business outreach program for almost any kind of business that wants to come to Arizona. So the other thing is that our exports to Mexico You always compare to California and Texas. Well, in 2014, the exports were up about 3.6 for Texas and about 3.8 for California. We were at 8.8. So now let me finish here because this is really important.
All right.
These city and council people have deep, deep roots in this community. They have had their professional life here. They've had their personal lives here. They've all worked for their community. They are committed to making this Arizona the best place we can be, and I think the sky's the limit, and we are going to see tremendous results in the next couple of years.
I would suggest that the new normal of 1 in 4 in poverty, the worst roads in the Southwest United States, an overall economy that if you measure the city of Tucson versus what the state does as a whole, we lag the state averages in job creation, in economic growth, period. This is not open for debate. If you actually pull the city of Tucson numbers out of the statewide average actually increases because the city of Tucson has been a drag on both of those things. You can talk about new normal all you want to. You can pass the buck to anybody else. The reality is the people that are in this community that you say have these long ties have a direct mismatch between what is the reality for the average citizen in Tucson and what they themselves have put forward in budgets, in terms of policies. Those are failures for the average citizen living in Tucson. That is not open for debate.
Let's talk about facts. You're constantly saying this 1 in 4 in poverty. You're talking about that study that was done that showed that we were 8th in the nation or something for low wages. Let me ask you that. In that study that you quote all the time, does that include cost of living?
It includes the basic reality that the average income
of
people living across Tucson, 1 in 4, 1 in 4 lives under the poverty rate.
But let me say,
that is a fact.
No, I need to say this. The study that you constantly talk about is apples and oranges, because what they've done is they've compared hold on, I let you speak. Someone making $45,000 in Tucson, and they're trying to compare it with someone who's making $75,000 in New York City. The person living in Tucson, because of the cost of living, is going to do a lot better here than the $75,000 person in New York City. You have to be honest with your facts, Bill.
I am honest with my facts.
I want to mention the situation. A lot of people have been critical of the council recently because of this rezoning or the rezoning that the developer wanted to get for a McDonald's at 22nd Street in Alvernon. It didn't work out, and I know, Bill, you had some criticism for the council about this.
You can look at it from the 50,000-foot level, and you can talk about whether or not private property rights even mean anything in the city of Tucson. When you compare not just McDonald's, but developments going back many decades, where people that owned a piece of property that they have every right in the world to develop it as they see fit, with the understanding that there's certain zoning and regulations you've got to abide by in order to do that. But the procedures and policies that the city of Tucson insists that anyone that wants to develop a piece of property, someone that lives miles away from that particular location, has an input, has a say on what that individual can do with their personal property, frankly, that's offensive as an American. You don't, the rules are written in such a way that we don't put the nuclear waste dump next to the nursery school. But at the same time, we don't insist that every person that wants to develop a piece of property, as long as it conforms to the general guidelines of the city rules, there shouldn't be any question about whether the owner can actually develop that following those rules. In the city of Tucson, the rules seem to change depending upon who's favored by various members of the city council. This is not something that anybody is randomly tossing out facts on. The reports in the newspaper, you hear them on the radio, you see them on TV. The reality is, if you don't have an in with certain members of the city council, you don't get favored treatment and you don't get your development.
And
that's a reality.
In this case, Cheryl, the developer wanted to knock down a residential house to expand the parking that would be available for this McDonald's, and the council didn't actually get to the council. There were some recommendations from staff, and the developer backed away from the project.
Exactly. Let's be really clear about this. The McDonald's could have gone into the regular pad and built the new McDonald's without a problem. What they wanted was a double drive-through. And that's where kind of some things came in, because they would have to take someone else's property. The other thing is...
They weren't taking someone else's property. They were purchased of that other piece of property.
I don't interrupt you, Bill. Please don't interrupt me. The city hears 5 to 6 of these cases or issues, proposals, every week. They go through without a problem. What Bill is doing is he's grabbing this one thing and he's going to blow it up to make it look like Tucson is not business friendly. The other thing is, that McDonald's pulled it and it never went to the council. So how can you blame the mayor and council when they never got to hear it?
When your policies are such that the average person wanting to develop their piece of property, that I look at it this way. Every city, every municipality has a welcome mat that the rest of the world sees. You can put not lots of things next to that welcome mat. You can actually put some things on that welcome mat. But for all intents and purposes, the perception that anybody driving by, anyone that does a simple search online, a Google search about whether or not this community actually is inviting to businesses, inviting to people that want to develop, expand, or relocate a business, whether it's a small mom and pop or some multi-million-dollar, thousands of employees kind of employer. If the average person doing that search sees that there is a negative business climate in that community, it doesn't matter what the mayor and council say. It's what they do and the policies they implement.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's what they do.
If your policies fundamentally tell the rest of the world, we don't want you here, that is a problem for the entire community.
Bill, I would like for you and I to sit down and go over all these business incentive plans. I'd like you to look at the list of new companies. Wait, hold on a second. List of new companies. What you are doing is a disservice to the voters of Tucson, and that is you are taking one issue, a McDonald's, and you are blowing it up into this huge issue.
Go do a Google search. Top 100, the vast majority of the search, the results you will find about Tucson and business friendly will be negative, period.
All right,
so we're going to believe Google now.
I want to move on to the city election coming up, because we're talking about these city issues. Jonathan Rothschild filed his matching funds request for all his campaign finance money this week, which is a first in city history. Typically, people need to raise the money over a longer period of time. And it does appear as though he got a very solid campaign organization. Bill, is this an impressive feat by Jonathan Rothschild? And are we going to see
From a political standpoint, of course it is. Anybody that turns in the maximum number of signatures, I don't care what political office they're running for, I don't care what political party they're from. That's impressive. Given the campaign finance rules for the city of Tucson, turning in, I forget the exact figure, 115,000 or something like that. Again, an impressive figure. Just because you put money in the bank doesn't mean you're going to win.
Right. Do we have a?
We will have very soon. We will have very soon.
You're down to your 30-day countdown clock to get those signatures turned in. So we're going to see someone emerge soon. You think Jonathan Rothschild facing trouble this year?
I don't think he is at all. I think that all the things that I've talked about, all the business that's been brought in, all the new innovations that he's done, he has a tremendous groundswell of support. As far as the other candidates, and I don't know, I mean, certainly we welcome an opponent. It's good for the voters to have discussion. As far as the other candidates in the race for the city council, you talk about, I talked about having deep roots, and I talked about being, within this community and caring about this community. What I found really interesting is that one of your candidates for city council has never voted in a city council race. He hasn't even bothered to vote in a municipal election. One of your other candidates has never voted in a primary for the city elections. This says something to me. This says that these people really aren't invested in this community. And I think as we go forward, we're going to see that the voters are going to go, wait a minute, let's look at downtown, streetcar, west side, new businesses, you know, all these wonderful things that are happening. And then they're going to look at the candidates who I'm sure are lovely people and great professionally, and they're going to go, where have they been? Okay. What do they know?
I want to let Bill respond to this, and then we're going to take a break.
I'll do it quickly. You talk about investment in the community, and I would submit that the 4 incumbents have invested to the community in a way that it has resulted in 1 in 4 in poverty, the worst roads in the Southwest United States, police and fire funded at levels cities half our size would receive funding levels at, and parks that are an embarrassment. You can talk about investing until you're blue in the face. I would submit that investment has not paid off for the citizens of Tucson.
All right,
okay,
and
what
we're going to, Cheryl, we're going to leave it there, and we're going to thank our sponsors over at the Arizona Inn, and we will be right back.
Zona Politics is a proud media partner of the Tucson Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, which serves the business community in the bilingual, bicultural region of the Arizona-Sonora border. For more information, visit TucsonHispanicChamber.org or call 620-0005. Support comes from the Arizona Inn, a 4-diamond family-owned historic resort hotel and restaurant on Elm Street near the U of A. Information is at arizonainn.com.
And we're back with my guests, Cheryl Cage from the Pima County Democratic Party and Bill Beard from the Pima County Republican Party. I want to talk about the Supreme Court this week, taking a look at the gay marriage question. And of course, Arizona, gay marriage became legal last year, despite a constitutional prohibition in the state constitution. And Bill, do you think marriage is a fundamental right?
Marriage is a right, but the question you have to ask, and I'll admit I'm gay. That's not a big deal. It's not something that people don't know about me. The question always comes down to what is the overarching principle in our law? Is it the idea that we have all these different rights that we ourselves can express, or is it that under the law we are to receive equal treatment? And as individuals, I was always taught that you are fundamentally, in our system of government, you receive the same treatment, regardless of your status, regardless of your skin color, regardless of who or what you are. You as an individual receive the same treatment as any other individual. I guess one of my fundamental questions always has come down to, why is the government in the business of marriage in the first place? You know, we reward status based on marriage, but as a result, we've got things like you know, tax deductions for folks that are married over people that are single. Well, if you buy the argument that we're supposed to be treated the same under our system of law, you have to ask, what happened to that equal treatment? And you know, I've heard folks on all different sides address a number of different issues, but that question has always been left open, and I've not heard it really discussed. But I think if you boil down all the arguments that are made in this discussion, I always come down on the idea that you are fundamentally, as a citizen of the United States, supposed to receive the same treatment as anyone else. No different, no more, no less than anyone else. And by that conclusion, I simply say, let's not have government be so involved in that discussion. You know, whether I and my partner or anyone else is married, single, or otherwise, frankly, it's not the government's business.
And Cheryl, should this process be resolved through the judicial process in the courts, or is it better to deal with it through the legislative process? Well,
I think I have a couple things to say here. I mean, it's nice to say that we all should be treated equally, but the reality is that we're not. When my husband was very, very sick and in the hospital, if I had not been married to him, I might not have been able to go into his hospital room and sit with him. I have many gay friends who have lost their partners and they were unable to visit them in the hospital. You talk about having children together. If you're not married and you have children together, you're in a whole world of hurt if anything ever happens. So I think that we all I'm making this general broad statement, we know that it's moving in the right direction. Marriage equality should be the law of the land, and it has a lot to do with being able to love who you want to love, but it also has a lot to do with daily life. And I think that's where the real importance is.
What about, Bill, do you think judicial process, legislative process, what's the best?
If it comes down to a choice between whether a court should decide something or the legislature, I tend to come down on the side of the legislature simply because that's the way our system was designed from the beginning. You start with the legislature. You start with what is it that the law should be so that people have all sides debated in the legislature. It's worked out during that process, and you come out with a product at the end of it that everybody says, okay, this is what we've decided to do. The problem always comes when you've got it going through the judicial system. Yes, there have been some landmark cases that truly changed things for a lot of different people. But if you look at the vast majority of cases that wind up in a court of law, you're asking one person, or in this case the Supreme Court, 9 people, to make a decision for everyone else. That's not very representative, and that kind of flies in the face of what this country was originally founded on, the idea that it's a representative form of government. We decide, we elect people that will make decisions about what laws govern us, rather than 1, 2, or just a small handful of people sitting in a court. And I'm not dissing courts by saying this. I'm simply saying if you've got a choice between whether the legislature should decide something like this or the judiciary, I'm going to come down on the side of the legislature 9 times out of 10.
And do you have any prediction about how the court will rule?
Everything that I've read, it sounds to me like it will probably be overturned, but you know, stranger things have happened.
It being overturned, being
that gay marriage will, the Supreme Court will basically say it is a right in one form or another, at least based on all the reporting I've seen.
Cheryl, your prediction?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the law of the land. But I will say that when you talk about the legislature versus the judiciary, you're making it sound like there's 3 people sitting in a room making a decision. They have the laws of our land that they have to follow. The legislature does not. That is where you have emotion. That's where you have, you know, people on the far left, people on the far right. That's why I think it's gotten to the point where it's at the Supreme Court.
Let's talk about the Pima County bond election with the time we have remaining here. And the Board of Supervisors is putting 7 questions on the ballot for voters to decide. Bill, are there any of these proposals that you support?
I haven't gone in depth in all the different sections that they've divided it up into. I think the first question the average citizen is going to ask when it comes to the bonds for Pima County is, can they be trusted to spend this money if we give them the authority? Number one, the way they say they're going to. And I think there is a history with this board, actually going back more than a decade, where the voters say one thing on election day, but the Board of Supervisors doesn't always follow that going forward. Money gets taken out of this bond package portion and put over here. They even take money out of one section and find a whole new section that was never originally voted on by the voters and put that money into this new thing. Now, you can argue about whether that was a wise decision on its face. The problem is they went to the voters and said, these are the things we're going to do. Do you want us to do them? The citizens said yes. The Board of Supervisors changed the rules as they went along. That's not how it's supposed to work. And I think until the Board of Supervisors can satisfactorily answer the question that, you know, have you spent our tax dollars wisely? Have you spent it the way we said we wanted it spent? I think the average person out there is going to say, I'm not going to trust you with another $800 million worth of tax dollars.
And Cheryl, are there any of these that you oppose?
No. I call them the lucky 7. You know, this has been worked on for the last 9 years. Again, going back to the kind of the new normal, there are things that we need to do to make this community vibrant, successful, to keep our young people here. And I think that this money and where it's been designated is a really good plan, and I fully support it.
Okay. How about these charter changes that are coming up? The City Council's looking at a variety of potential charter changes, including giving the mayor equal power with the council members, changing who has the authority to hire and fire some of the top department heads over at the City of Tucson, and then also changing some of the taxing authority and limits on what the council can and can't tax via voter approval. Bill, your thoughts on these charter changes?
I think the technical changes, I don't have an issue with any of them. They, you know, from a logic standpoint, they make perfect sense. Treating the mayor the same as the other council members. I think the one issue that the council's going to have the hardest time selling to the voters is the increase in the bonding capacity. Now, again, you can argue the merits of any one thing that they're going to spend it on, but basically they're saying we're going to set aside future sales tax, we're going to set aside future tax revenue to pay for X, Y, and Z. For the average person, they're not going to look at the small details or the minutia of that. They're going to see that as a $650 million tax increase. Like it or not, that's not going to sell too well for you know, a population that has 1 in 4 in poverty. They've got the worst roads in the country, or the Southwest United States, police and fire inadequately funded, and you know, parks that are an embarrassment. That's not going to be a very easy sell for them.
Cheryl, your thoughts on these charter changes?
Okay, first of all, I really want people to understand that this 1 in 4 thing that you're talking about is completely erroneous, and you really don't have any facts to back that up. So let's have a conversation about that. Also, I want to talk about the roads for a second. We have 241 lane miles paved, and they saved $11.7 million in doing that, which means we get another 650 to 700 lane miles in addition. So this
was the bond program that the city passed.
Yeah. So this is
2 years ago.
The other thing is that you're once again being disingenuous by saying, oh, if we give them this taxing authority, they're going to go out and spend, you know, like a drunken sailor. Nothing can be done unless the voters approve it. I will say that, I need to say that a billion times. Give the city the ability to have a little bit more flexibility with where they want to ask the voters to invest. But people need to remember that this is not a tax increase. This is simply a change so that if the city and council or the business community or whatever other community that has a voice here in Tucson says, we think we need this money, they can go to the voters. The other thing is I want to say about the county bond, that's only going to be about $6 a month for the average homeowner. I mean, that's a Frappuccino at Starbucks. So this is a great investment in our future.
We heard the Frappuccino line with the dog pound last year. I think fundamentally you have to go back and ask the question, for the average citizen, are they going to see an increase in bonding capacity be anything other than a tax increase? For the average citizen, the average voter, that's the conclusion they will come to.
Well, that is such a both sides of the mouth comment.
We're going to have to hold it there because
Okay.
we are out of time. I want to thank both Cheryl Cage, Bill Beard, my guest today, for coming by. I'd also like to thank our sponsors over at the Arizona Inn, as well as our media partners at the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. If you missed any part of our show today, you can catch up with us on zonapolitics.com and follow us on Facebook. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Support comes from Brink Media, Arizona's most politically aware creative agency. Buy our vote at brink.com. Support for this program generously provided by Charles A. Levy.